Hello, I'm Locke, Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Lines where my guest is Judge Bruce Bennett. He has been a judge on the 21st Judicial District Court for over 28 years and retired just this year. Judge Bennett's going to talk to us about his observations about the legal system and where he received the most fulfillment in his role as a judge. That's on drug court, and he's going to tell us why. So join us on the next Legal Lines with Judge Bruce Bennett.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. Document your claim. What do I mean? Whenever you present a claim, whether it's for injuries in an automobile collision or for a breach of contract case or a business claim, it all boils down to documentation and evidence. For example, when you go to trial, basically both sides are presenting their evidence of what they believe to be their case. For example, also, if you're involved in an automobile collision, document the event. Talk to all the parties who are involved. Get their names, address, contact information, insurance info. Talk to the witnesses on the scene. Also get their contact information. Take photographs. With the phones we all have these days, everybody can take a picture and that paints 1,000 words. So document your claim. The Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is document the claim.
This has been Legal Lines Tips.
Hello, welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and I'm very pleased to have on the show for the very first time Judge Bruce Bennett. Judge, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hi, Locke. Good to be here.
Judge, you've been just recently retired last year, and you'd been a judge for what, over 28 years?
That's right. I was a judge over across the river, the Abete River, in the 21st District, Livingston Parish, St. Helena Parish, Tangipahoa Parish. I was elected March 8th of 1988.
I saw that.
Judge Morrison and I were elected at the same time during the same race in different divisions.
And y'all's parish has been one of the fastest growing parishes in the state for it seems like a decade at least. And I assume you've seen a lot of things change in the judiciary and particularly in Livingston.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Livingston Parish, well, the entire area. You and I, as old practicing attorneys, know that Livingston Parish had a heck of a reputation for a long time.
That's right.
As being pretty much hostile to Baton Rouge attorneys, but that's been one of the most dramatic changes with the complete suburbanation and urbanization of the area. And Livingston Parish is a great place to live. It's got some great people, and it's come a long, long way.
And very family oriented.
Very family oriented, very very spiritually oriented. There's a lot of faith and people of faith who live in Livingston Parish, and it's a good place to live, good place to raise a family.
Well, tell the folks a little bit about your background. First of all, your educational history.
Well, I'm an LSU grad. I was a youngster at Independence High School and was fortunate enough to, in those days, they had the top 100 scholarship program, and I was afforded an education which otherwise I probably would not have gotten at LSU in undergrad.
Wow, excellent.
In those days, of course, in the 60s, we had the Vietnam conflict, which we all grew up to and which affected every young man's life.
Well, and you served in the military.
Well, I did, and I had always wanted to be in the service, but Vietnam sort of forced a particular pathway. I became very interested in ROTC at LSU. Became a member of the Air Force ROTC Corps, and ultimately they selected me as Corps Commander of the entire Corps of Cadets at LSU. Took an undergraduate there, and then in those days they had the combined business and law program. I don't know if you remember that.
I did. I attended it.
You could go 3 years, and then your 4th year of business was your 1st year of law school.
Oh, whoa, we're talking about something different. I didn't get that.
Yeah, this is different.
Oh, what a great deal.
It was a great deal, and so I was able to, my 1st year of law school counted as my 4th year of business. I took an undergraduate degree and then was able 2 years later to graduate from law school. So in 6 years, I was able to make it through the program and take a degree from LSU Law School in 1975 at the ripe old age of 22. And was Corps Commander, went into the Air Force immediately after I passed the bar. I went in as a judge advocate.
Served for 4 years?
Served for 4 years. So I was down at Keesler Air Force Base. I was the head of their military justice department for some time, mainly prosecuting cases, and then later was shipped overseas to Keflavik, Iceland. We had a base
Really?
there. We had a base there.
How interesting.
Which has since closed, but had a very interesting sort of quasi-diplomatic post doing international law, working for NATO command and an international command, and dealt with a lot of foreign nationals, foreign officers. It was a fabulous, fabulous experience for a kid.
Out of Independence.
Out of Independence, Louisiana, and was able, through that process to simply become pretty comfortable in just about any environment.
Interesting. Well, great training.
Was also able to do a lot of defense work at that time. So by the time I got out of the service, I was pretty well trained in both prosecution and defense in criminal matters, and had a pretty good civil mediation and negotiation.
So when you came back to the States, what did you do?
Located in Hammond, went in with a couple of guys. One of them still practicing over there, Tom Anderson, and Curtis Bayham, who has practiced on and off over the years. I think Curtis lives here in Baton Rouge now, but it was Bayham, Anderson, and Bennett. Later formed a solo practice, and then after about 12 years in the practice, decided I wanted to give it a shot to run for judge. So did that and was elected at the ripe old age of 35.
So you have spent a long time. I think I read one of the longest serving judges in the 21st Judicial District, and I know you've seen a lot of changes. Tell the folks what you think is working as it relates to the kind of judicial system and processes.
Well, I mean, there's so many things that you can talk about, Locke, over a 28-year career. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, let me reverse it then. Tell me what you see as being, because of the changes in our society, and as when we've talked privately, you've indicated basically the system's overwhelmed.
Well, and I think that anyone who is involved in the judicial system, whether it's here in Louisiana or anywhere in the United States, knows quite well that the system is overwhelmed. And most attorneys don't realize this. The unusual thing is that many of the attorneys practice civil law, and occasionally they get to court in a contested matter. It's a very organized thing. Cases are set well in advance, and many times those attorneys don't walk down the hall in criminal duty court.
You're right.
Or juvenile court.
I know that's not where I've spent any significant time.
I did a lot of civil work, but the criminal and juvenile and family courts, in particular, they're where the problem really is in our judicial system. They're just incredibly overwhelmed. You can read what's happening with the legislature and the governor and finances, and the Supreme Court is weighed in now saying that the public defender system is in terrible trouble, and they are, in terms of providing a defense to people who can't afford attorneys.
Well, and I know the newly elected Governor Edwards appointed you to a committee to serve and kind of focus on this issue of the criminal breakdown.
Yeah, it was a compliment to me, and I was really privileged to serve on that transition committee. There were a lot of locals there too. The district attorney over here, Hilla Moore, was on it, and my colleague Judge Morrison was on the committee, and a lot of other good people were on the committee. And our role was to make recommendations and to give advice to the newly elected governor concerning the Department of Corrections and all of the agencies within the department.
Okay, we'll continue this. I know you served as a drug court judge for about 18 years, so join us on the next segment. I have as my guest Judge Bruce Bennett. We'll be right back.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. Never give a recorded statement or give a written statement without first seeing an attorney. Remember, you can always see an attorney for the most part free on the first visit. Get educated. Knowledge is power. Learn what the consequences are of the decisions. Learn what the issues are. And then if you feel necessary, give the recorded statement. Remember, in Louisiana, we have what's called comparative fault. Typically, what that means is a judge or jury is required to divide fault up amongst all the players to decide who pays what in damages. Recorded statements are often used in depositions and trials to argue that the victim or the plaintiff is partially at fault for their own damages to reduce the amount that they collect. So my Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is don't give a recorded statement.
This has been Legal Lines Tips.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. Again, I'm very pleased to have on the show for the first time Judge Bruce Bennett. He recently retired after 28 years as a judge on the 21st Judicial District. Judge, let's kind of dive right back in. You were talking about the legal system or the procedures justice system is kind of overwhelmed, and particularly in the criminal component.
Well, and let me say this, there are many things that we could talk about, Locke, over a career of 28 years, but one of the new developments, or relatively new developments, is the development of what we call specialty courts. Specialty courts are courts that, because of a certain social problem which has developed, the judiciary has gotten actively involved in trying to address those specific problems in specific areas in order to create a better society. For example, the breakdown of the American family.
Right.
Well,
we've seen a lot of changes in society over 30 years.
We now have family preservation courts. We have, I think, 3 active family preservation here in Louisiana.
Courts.
We have DWI courts, which are addressed to alcohol abuse and the specific type of offender that uses alcohol and drives. We have one of my favorites, one near and dear to my heart, is the drug court. And I know that you've had segments before concerning drug court.
Judge Tony Marabella has discussed about it in the context.
Fine human being, and just the guru, or one of the gurus when it comes to Louisiana drug courts. He's been involved in the Baton Rouge drug court for many, many years. In about 1997, we started drug courts in the 21st. Judge Morrison was an avid supporter. I was very skeptical because judges are trained to be neutrals. They learn to be advocates as an attorney.
Right.
And then they have to go through the mindset of becoming a neutral arbiter. My job was to find facts and to make decisions. Well, one of the huge changes that we have seen in the development of the judiciary is that we are now expected to be social workers too.
It's fascinating. That's got to be strange for you too, because your judicial philosophy is
crime and punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there's nothing wrong with
being
a social worker.
And also conservative. You know, courts shouldn't be but
That's right.
It's been forced on you guys.
It sounds like a liberal philosophy, but let me tell you what, I am an absolute true believer in that metamorphosis that's happened in the judiciary. Drug courts have existed in Louisiana since about 96. We were about the second court in Louisiana that started them. The 22nd is one of the national leaders in drug courts.
Really?
They're what's called a mentoring court. Other drug courts in teams come down from around the nation and observe their proceedings to see how to set up a drug court. But basically, what is drug court about? It is about not putting people in jail if we can avoid it, and making them get drug rehabilitation. That's it in a nutshell.
Let's talk about, because the bottom line is our system for folks who are incarcerated because of, and what percentage of criminals these days have some component of drug or booze involved?
It's hard to say, and that's
it's a huge percentage.
Well, you know, there's a lot of criticism. People say, well, everybody's in jail because of drugs. Well, not really. I mean, they may be in jail for an armed robbery or burglary, etc., and the police arrested them because they also had drugs, and drug cases are easy to make. Armed robbery cases
a little harder to prove, right?
Yeah, and so on paper they may be in jail for a drug offense, but really and truly they may have committed a much more serious offense.
The bottom line is the criminals that y'all deal with, the guys that go into prison, they have the same characteristics over and over and over. Explain that to folks.
Well, and the point is, the statistics are probably 80% of the people in jail are there because of drug-related offenses. You know, if someone's addicted to drugs, they go commit burglaries to support their habits, or they rob people, or their families break up, or they get divorced, or they lose their job, or all of the things that come with drug abuse.
And they're poorly educated.
Many times they're poorly educated, but it's not, you know, drug abuse runs the gamut of education and wealth and family background. No, it's much more insidious than just an educational component.
And the recidivism rate, meaning the rate of return of a criminal who's released, it's
over 50% now in the absence of drug courts. So I have some statistics, and I gave you a brochure of our Supreme Court, We now have enough time and effort in the system and enough numbers, enough raw statistics to be able to definitively say that drug courts work. They work.
And they work both for the public and for the individual
you
who's
talk about
in the
you
system.
talk about a win-win-win situation is a drug court, because it costs me about $4,000 to run a defendant through drug court for a year and a half, whereas it would take about $30,000 or $35,000 to keep that person in jail. No contest. But what we're able to do is actually change that person and reduce the possibility that they're going to commit crimes. The latest indications from the Supreme Court, the recidivism rate is down to 10% based on 2012 graduates, and that's after a 3-year period.
Good God.
How do you argue with that?
And what you're doing is you're taking a person who is not really producing and providing in society and being a productive citizen of our state and country, and you're turning them into that.
I've seen miracles happen in drug court. I saw a young lady who was on the streets selling herself for crack, who wound up being a registered nurse.
Wow, that's impressive.
I saw an armed robber who robbed 2 convenience stores, and the district attorney, who is the gatekeeper to drug court, managed to reduce the charge to a nonviolent charge, which, that was a discretionary call. But the guy went through drug court. He wound up owning one of the convenience stores that he robbed.
What a great story.
And you can't make this sort of stuff up, but I have seen actual miracles happen. Families reunited. Here's another great statistic. 49 drug-free babies were born to drug court participants at an estimated savings of $12,250,000. That brings a total of the recorded drug-free babies to 593.
Good
for
God.
the time that
Lives
we've run.
saved, in essence.
That's right. And over $148 million in savings.
So the American, and in our case, the Louisiana residents and citizens who pay taxes
saved $148 million because of drug court.
The judiciary is not having to deal with those folks. Well, I take that back. In the context of the prison system and everything
Correct.
else. And then those individuals are returned to society with skills to be very productive. All right, we'll continue this on the next segment. This is Locke with Legal Lines. My guest, Judge Bruce Bennett. We'll be right back.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. Never sign a settlement document without first seeing an attorney. You often can see an attorney for free, at least on the first visit. Knowledge is power. Learn what it is that you're signing and the consequences of signing that document are. Remember, once you sign a settlement document, regardless of whether it's contractual, business claim, or personal injury claim, it's over. You will no longer have rights. You can no longer file a lawsuit. You better know what your consequences are. You better make sure you're being fully compensated. And remember, oftentimes, there are obligations that you have once you sign that contract. So from me, Locke Meredith, to you, the Legal Lines tip is never sign a settlement document without first seeing an attorney.
This has been Legal Lines Tips.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith, and again, very pleased to have on the show Judge Bruce Bennett. He served as a judge in the 21st Judicial District Court for 28 years. Judge, let's dive right back in. You know, we in Louisiana incarcerate the largest percentage of our population than any country in the world.
That's right.
Much less any state in the United States.
That's right.
And we're talking about how drugs seems to be intricately involved in this process.
Well, and they are, and that's why specialty courts are such an important part of the future of the judiciary. Unfortunately, many of our judges are still way behind the 8 ball when it comes to being interested in handling these. These are voluntary positions.
And I was reading about your involvement in this. You found this the most fulfilling part of your whole experience as a judge.
Absolutely. And even as an attorney now, I do represent criminal defendants, many of them charged with criminal violations. I'm now with one of the fastest growing criminal defense firms in the area, Manasseh, Gill, Knight, Belanger, and I'm of counsel for them. My point is we do a lot of criminal work. And one of the things I do is I encourage people charged with criminal offenses to get interested in drug court and seek enrollment in drug court. I do have some websites. I know we're short on time, If you want to know more information from a national standpoint, the National Association of Drug Court Professionals, that's NADCP.org, and our state organization is LADCP.com.
And that'll come up on the screen.
That'll come up on the screen, and also the Supreme Court site. It's important for attorneys, but also the public, LASC.org. You can get some tremendous information from all of those websites. There's a new area of courts opening up. Judge Rusty Knight over in the 22nd, began by some judges down in New Orleans, called reentry courts. Now this is really a specialty
Interesting.
court. You've got guys who are incarcerated in Angola who are
Bad
dudes.
Bad situations.
Okay, but mentors are developed for them among lifers.
Meaning folks that are in prison for the rest of their life.
Who have transformed, and a lot of it is a spiritual awakening that has happened within our prison system. It's almost like a spiritual revival that's
Fantastic.
happened.
That's good news.
It is good news. But it has created some people that are interested in mentoring these young men, turning them around. They teach them skills and trades while they're at Angola or some of the other prisons. And then, as a condition of any parole, they are reintegrated into society based on the drug court model. And a judge presides over their probationary period. Judge Knight is doing it in the 22nd. We're working on Judge Johnson, perhaps to do it in the 21st Judicial District. And I'm really excited. It's too early to have any statistics because the guys are just getting out. But I can tell you that Hood Motor Company, for example, in Amite, they've hired a couple of their welders and mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
Love them. They want more.
Well, explain to the folks just briefly kind of what are the basic ways that drug court operates to protect the public, but also turn these folks into productive citizens.
We require them to see a judge once a week. We drug test them 3 to 4 times a week. They're required to attend AA, NA, 12-step sessions. We impose sanctions when they're bad, maybe 24, 48, 72 hours in jail. We do nice things to them when they're good, pat them on the back, give them a free free drug test.
So when you say we, you're talking about the judge heading up the court?
The judge heads it up. They come to court.
So in essence, you become their mentor / father?
You become their big brother, their father, their mentor, their jailer, their priest, their confidant.
It takes a special person.
But it's a very rewarding thing that judges do. So if nothing else, I would encourage members of the judiciary to get
Are these
involved.
nonviolent
Primarily
offenders?
nonviolent, but and that's required by statute, but quite frankly, a lot of violent crimes are caused by drug abuse, and the people are perfectly rehabilitatable if they get off the drugs and learn to control them.
And how long are they in the probation period?
Generally, probation is 5 years, but drug court is usually about 1.5 years to 2 years before.
So it's a long process.
Well, the real plum, though, is it's a deferral of imposition of guilt, which means that not only is it a deferred sentence under 893, which many of our attorneys would understand, but you're never found guilty of the offense. And so you can get it dismissed, and you can get an expungement and get your record cleared.
Have a clean record.
Get a clean record and a fresh start.
Explain to parents who have, you've seen parents after parent deal with their children who's been involved in drugs and the consequences. What would you tell them to do to if they are concerned about that?
The best advice I can give any parent from what I have seen, regardless of whether your child is a straight A student, is a church member, is a Boy Scout, whatever, is when they hit the age of about 11, 12, hit junior high, is to start drug testing your children.
Really?
That's right.
And now how is that done? Just with the P-test? Or?
Just the P-test, and you
well, I know a lot of schools are
primarily for marijuana. And interestingly enough, there's some great articles on marijuana from that NA, National Association of Drug Court Professional website, studies on marijuana. Usually these things begin with marijuana. Here's why. If your child is a good child, they're going to be under incredible peer pressure. Usually peer pressure is 7, 8 times more powerful than parental guidance. They're going to be under incredible pressure to try stuff. Isn't it nice for them to tell their friends, my crazy daddy drug test me?
They're given an excuse, a legitimate way of not doing something.
That's right.
Very fascinating. Well, let's shift gears real fast because
right.
we're running out of time. Judge for 28 years, what would you say are the top problems you see young lawyers come into court with?
Oh, I think one of the toughest things is that the profession is so much more competitive now than it used to be, a lot more lawyers, and there's so many rules and regulations concerning the practice of law which were not there 30 years ago when I was practicing law. I think that this business of disciplining lawyers, quite frankly, has gotten out of hand. I really think that we spend way too much money and effort. You know, the Supreme Court wants the legal profession to be cast in a better light. What better way than to emphasize the positive things that the profession does, rather than to investigate and drop the hammer on what are picayunish and minor violations, and then make an example of that attorney for the public. I don't see how that increases the public confidence in the legal profession, quite frankly.
Judge, I agree. It's been wonderful having you on
Thank
the
you
show.
very much.
Thank you very much. This is Locke Meredith with Judge Bruce Bennett, 28-year judge on the 21st Judicial District Court. Thank you for being with us.
It's time now for Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.
Hello, I'm Locke Meredith with a Legal Lines tip for you. If you have to hire a lawyer, and I hope you don't, but if you do, hire a lawyer that you like, that you trust, and who specializes in your area of need. In these days, with all the laws we have, lawyers for the most part now specialize. They specialize in contracts, defense, business, personal injury, all kinds of areas of the law. So when you interview with a lawyer, ask him, does he specialize in the area of your need? Has he tried the cases? Has he been successful? And of course, how does he charge you? Is his fee hourly? Is it a percentage of the case if he recovers? What exactly does he charge? So my Legal Lines tip from me, Locke Meredith, to you is, if you have to hire a lawyer, hire one you like, you trust, and who specializes in your area of need.
This has been Legal Lines Tips with your host, Locke Meredith.